All right. Hey, Brad, how are you?
I'm doing well, Douglas. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. So I looked on your webpage and it said author, columnist, commodities trader, musician. Is that the order of your life?
Well, it depends on if you're talking about income or interest or whatnot. I kind of like to spread it out a little bit. I find I never could quite figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, so I decided to be a lot of different things. And writing is my passion. It's something I've been doing the longest. Music is my release. Commodities trading is my intellectual satisfaction, and I like to, and I just like to kind of write what I feel and put it out there. And apparently, people like what I have to say. So I've written probably over 100 columns now, and several novels, of which two have been published so far. And the latest one is the one we're talking about today.
Well, I noticed that you had written columns for a lot of people: National Review, New York Daily News, Wall Street Journal, Daily Wire. So you're
Hmm.
pretty much freelance as a column writer?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really a hobby of mine. And it's a hobby that I was able to monetize a little bit. And I try to basically just write about what I find interesting. I'd like to think I'm not really pigeonholed into one particular type of, like, a business writer or a political writer or, whatnot. So, like when I write for the Wall Street Journal, I tend to write in the more business area, which is, like commodities trading and energy, which is what I trade. And when I write for Daily Wire, I like to do a little bit more musings on life. And National Review, I tend to be more historical, although they actually did let me write a piece about the Who, which I enjoyed
Oh,
writing. So really, I'm writing all the time, and it's either becomes a stack of papers in my desk, or I put it out there for people to either like or not like, or absorb or not absorb. And it's been a very nice ride so far over the last, certainly the last decade or so. And appearing like in the Wall Street Journal several times was something I never quite imagined when I started out, or having published novels. But it seems to have taken on a life of its own, and it's something that I see myself doing really for the rest of my life. I enjoy it very much.
well, a job like that is something that I think a lot of people might aspire to because you can do it from home, you can do it at your own pace. It doesn't require any huge startup costs. All you need is a computer, basically,
Yep, computer and an email,
and an email,
pretty
right?
much.
So is it essentially like all kind of creative businesses where you just do your thing, submit it to people, and hope they accept it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't start off saying I'm going to be a writer. There's the old expression, don't quit your day job. My day job really from the time I was, I guess, 21, 20, was working on the floor of the commodities exchanges because I'm from Chicago. I graduated Illinois, and I
Oh,
immediately
okay,
went down into the pits.
right.
And then after the trading pits, which I wrote an article about in the Wall Street Journal, after they basically closed down because of electronic trading, I moved to what they call over the counter. But it gives me enough time because there's a lot of downtime in trading. Sometimes, we have an expression in trading: when there's nothing to do, do nothing. And which gives me the freedom to write and to really explore that side. And I think it's a nice balance. It's sort of the creative left brain, right brain sort of dynamic. And together, it's and they sort of feed off each other, because I think trading requires thinking creatively, and I think all the people I've met and all the experiences I've had in trading and in meeting people has fueled my writing, both in characters, both in ideas. And like, I know I had one idea for a book that I wrote where me and a trader were just talking one time, and then a lot of these start off with what if scenarios. And so that's, I mean, I think I'm fortunate enough that I had enough downtime where I started as a hobby, but then I realized, like I said before, I could monetize it. And so that's one of my jobs. I have several jobs, and I was even able to monetize playing music for a while. I was in a band in New Jersey, and sorry, this thing comes out. And so we were able to do that. So there's the only thing better than pursuing your art is being able to get paid for it, I think, which is a dream. But um, like I said, I enjoy everything that I do, And which is why I can't really commit to one side or the other. And so fortunately, because of the part-time nature of both of these professions, really three if you consider music, they all kind of fill my day. And I don't think I'd be able to do this if I was a lawyer, let's say, or some, although I know some lawyers have done it, like John Grisham and Scott Turow, but they then went on to become professional writers full time. Like, I don't think I could do that, but I can with this job, which is very fortunate for me.
Well, I think it's a good idea to keep your fingers in several pies for a number of reasons, but primarily because it keeps you fresh. You don't get stuck in a rut. No matter how much you love your job, there are writers out there who are tremendously successful who have to take a break from it because it just gets too overwhelming. I mean, I had this conversation with David Baldacci, and he said that there's a point, because he's a very successful writer, where you just have to say, you know what, you have to approach it as a job. And most jobs, you get a vacation.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I haven't gotten to that point yet. I haven't, reached his success either. Not yet. I'm hoping to, and someday. And if it happens, great. But if not, the downside is that when I'm gone, people will have a record of my existence, which is something nice, But I can see. I think I forget. I might have been Christopher Hitchens or somebody was talking about someone who he admired, who was a writer, and I really forget the name of who the person was, but he said, "How do you write so many books?" And he said, he looked at me, he said, 2,000 words a day, And basically, I imagine like some of these professional writers, some of my idols, from the Stephen Kings to the Ken Folletts of, all those guys like Cormac McCarthy. I imagine them actually getting up in the morning, making their coffee, going down and sitting down and saying, okay, I'm now at work. I now have something to write and something to do, and I'm not going to lunch until I have 2,000 words down. And I can see myself doing that. I don't see myself ever getting tired of writing. I love it. I'm always writing, to be honest. Whenever I'm not, examining markets or anything like that. And I love it because I tend to do it late at night or early in the morning, which is a very peaceful time to do it. And it's a great way to clear your mind, and it's a great way to reflect on things and to sort of just examine yourself and put it down. So I hope it never goes from the beloved hobby that pays me to a job. But again, having not reached that pinnacle of success, I can't speak for where I will be. I never say never. So I hope that's not the case. But, obviously, David Baldacci is doing something right because he keeps coming back and writing great work again and again.
Yeah, and he seems to keep getting better. I mean, every book I've read of his, the next one was better than the last one.
Well, it's like a skill set. It's like you become a better golfer the more swings you hit. And people ask me, how do you become a better writer? And the answer is
practice.
You just do it. It's like anything else, right?
Yeah, it's practice. Like music. Let's talk a little bit about your music, and then I want to hit your book, The Extraordinary. Sure. What do you play?
When I was a little kid, actually, it's funny. I wanted to be my father he loved music. Music was always in my house. He didn't play an instrument himself, but I grew up listening to Frank Sinatra. I grew up listening to Oscar Peterson, especially. And so the piano always interested me, but I sort of gravitated towards classical piano. So when I was a little kid, I decided I wanted to be a concert pianist because I saw a movie, called Moonlight Sonata. It's an old black and white movie from the 20s, maybe, or the early 30s. And Ignaz Paderewski played on it. And he played the Hungarian Rhapsody, and then he played Moonlight Sonata. And he played the Chopin Polonaise. And I was like, wow, I'd like to do that. So I asked my parents. I was one of those rare kids who asked my parents to take piano lessons. So I've been playing piano most of my probably from the age of 10 on. And then so I did that for years. And then I kind of went to college and sort of forgot about it because you can't really take a piano with you. That's the problem I didn't like about piano was it wasn't portable. There's no Far Side that shows a bunch of cowboys sitting around a table and sitting around a fire, and there's a guy with a gigantic grand piano sticking out of his back pocket, and they're like, why don't you pull that out and play us a tune? That doesn't really work in real life. But then And then when I got older, I decided one day I wanted to play guitar because I heard Eric Clapton's Crossroads from Cream's Wheels of Fire. And I was like, that I'd love to do as well. So, and it just so happened that, not to make a long story of it, but in my neighborhood here, we have a thing called a school show, and they needed somebody to play guitar in the school band. All the parents put it on. So I was like, okay, I'll pick it up. And that was at the age of 40. And I said to myself, well, I'm 40 years old. I've never played guitar before, but in 10 years, I'll be 50. So that's not going to change. So I can either be 50 or I can be 50 with 10 years of guitar behind me. So I chose that course. And then that just sort of blossomed. And guitar I picked up very quickly. And so I've been playing really guitar and piano ever since. And that's, and then it just blossomed from there. Then I looked around one day on like Craigslist and people needed a guitarist for a band. So I was like, why not? It's kind of an older band, older bunch of guys. I was the oldest. And so I played with these guys and we kind of played around the New Jersey circuit a little bit. It was a lot of fun, and I played, and you got to meet neat people and a different type of strata than you usually see. And it was just, music is such a great uniting, feature about it, that it's one of the things I think I really liked about it, is that you meet so many different people and there's no such thing as race or color or other. It's just everybody like just digs music.
No, there never has been. I mean, even back in the days of the very segregated United States, black and white musicians played together, primarily jazz, and there was no racism there. Not in the actual playing. After it was done, it was a different story.
But Oscar Peterson was probably my father's favorite, and Oscar Peterson, Ed Thigpen on the drums. You had Ray Brown on bass, and they played with a white guy, Herb Ellis, on guitar. It was just a great crew, And so I think that's what appealed to me about music too, as well.
Oscar's one of my favorites as well. And
I mean, he's from another. I'm convinced he's from another planet. I don't know how he could play what he played. It's I've been playing piano for most of my life, so call it 40 years. I'm not even close to what he can do. I mean, I'm not, what did Sam Jackson say, right? I'm not in the same ballpark. I'm not even in the same sport, and I'm not bad. This guy was just incredible. And there were so many great musicians that came out of that time. And, I also my father listened to Ella Fitzgerald a lot. And then then my brothers loved the Allman Brothers, and they were also an integrated band coming from the South. At one point they had J-Mo Hansen, they had Joe Hansen, they had Lamar on the bass,
right.
After Barry Oakley died. And so, that's sort of been my experience with music too. And I've always liked that.
Well, one thing about Oscar, and it was funny, we were talking about writing and about the craft and you get better. I saw an interview with Oscar, and the guy said, well, you obviously didn't start out being able to play that fast. And he said there was a period in his life when he was young where he practiced for 10 hours a day. I mean, imagine sitting at the piano for 10 hours a day and not moving until he could gradually speed up his fingers, because essentially it's all muscular memory. Mm-hmm. And the faster and the longer he did it, the more he could do it, until it became very second nature to him, where he could just do it anytime. But here's the difference. Let me make a comparison.
I think he also, you've got to be hardwired for that.
Well,
I mean, I could sit down 10 hours a day and never be able to do that.
Okay, right. People do have different skill sets. I think you start with the basic ability. But here's another example. You mentioned somebody else who are on the opposite ends of the scale. Ella Fitzgerald is, in my opinion, the greatest jazz singer of all time. Her voice was just phenomenal.
You and I are agreeing on a lot of things here, because I love Ella Fitzgerald.
But on the other hand, she never rehearsed. She never practiced. She just got out on stage, did it. And then she'd go back to her hotel room, and she wasn't very social, so she'd stay alone and do whatever she did, read books. But here's the difference. Somebody like that, it was pure talent, God-given talent, if you like. Oscar certainly had God-given talent, but unless he played 10 hours a day to practice, he probably wouldn't have gotten to where he was.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah,
so it's interesting.
Grease, I guess a lot. It's funny just to carry this a little bit more. I mean, my people always ask me what my desert island album is, and it's Ella and Louie. I think it's 1956. The Verve cut
I've listened to
with
that.
Oscar
It's great.
and Buddy Rich on drums. It's got Buddy Rich on drums. It's got Ray Brown on bass. It's got Herb Ellis on guitar, and it's got Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, and Oscar Peterson. I mean, I don't, doing Cole Porter and some other I don't know what gets better than that. I mean, I don't know personally.
I don't think it does. You know what? We have just like blown completely through our interview. Can you give us a 1 minute synopsis of The Extraordinary? Because I know that's why you were here to plug your book.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, look, I mean, no, The Extraordinary is sort of a lot of this sort of leads up to it. My father was a Marine in Korea. He came back and he did have PTSD. And so I always wanted to write a book about PTSD from a novel standpoint. I didn't feel like my writing was up to it. And so I decided finally it was time for me to write it, and basically based on some of the high school experiences I had dealing with a man who was really suffering. He was a combat veteran. I mean, he was, Saving Private Ryan type combat veteran. And, anybody who knows about the 1st Marine Division in Korea knows that they had a hard time. And, but I also noticed how so many friends of mine have children who have autism, and I was always interested in that too. And so I didn't think either subject themselves made a good enough story, but I thought if I combined the two, and what if I told the story basically based on my father's experiences? I moved it to Iraq from Korea to modernize it. But what if I took those experiences and I tried to tell it through the eyes of an autistic boy, 14-year-old Wes Scott? And so that's sort of what I did. And it kind of recaptured the bonding I had with my father. And of course, Wes is trying to process the fact that his father comes back from the war different than where he was, a different man than when he left. And he's trying to process this through a highly intelligent, but also very quiet, introverted autism that he has, his brand of the spectrum. And also, I wanted to tell the story about how autism affects family members around it. They're around it, both good and bad. It's not always a pleasant experience dealing with a child on the spectrum, especially when you have other children relatively close to the same age and they feel like a lot of the air is being taken out of the room by them. So it's really the story of a family dealing both with autism and with PTSD, and how they sort of basically make it through the crucible to the other side. And there's some tragedy along the way, and there's some I'd like to think some deep thinking and some realistic scenes that happen that I know have happened to friends of mine with children with autism, and I know happened to me with my father and his PTSD. And I hope that I was able to also treat the subject matter with enough care and delicacy and respect that people understand that this really is at the end a story about a family coming together and overcoming really some pretty difficult circumstances. And I hope people both who have experienced PTSD and also have experienced, dealing with people on the spectrum can understand and appreciate and pull something out of the book. So that was my goal.
Unfortunately, we've got to cut it right here.
It's all right.
My guest is Brad
I'll talk about Oscar
Schaeffer.
Peterson all day, so no worries.
My guest is Brad Schaeffer. His novel is called The Extraordinary. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. It's bradschafferauthor.com. And also, if you go on Amazon and you type in Brad Schaeffer, The Extraordinary, I have two novels. This one is The Extraordinary, and the other one is a World War II book called Of Another Time and Place. It actually I was very happy with some of the reviews it got. And it's about a German fighter pilot who saves a family of Jews during the height of the Holocaust. So it's sort of a Schindler's List meets 12 O'Clock High. And for people who are interested in World War II fiction, I think you will like this because it's a different perspective than you usually see of the war, and it's also very introspective, which is the way I try to write.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. This was nice talking to you. Sorry we got off on a tangent with
It's quite all right.
Oscar.
Douglas, it's your show, and I appreciate the time just talking to you and being able to explain to your fans out there that there's a very nice book about autism and PTSD, and I hope that they take the time to buy it.
Okay, great.